Well, I want to welcome you all to this first event that Yoga Mass as a team, as a community are offering in the new year. And I just want to welcome you and wish you a very happy new year. John and I have been working to come together with you in community, and we are so happy to be offering this session tonight for you so that we can work on this idea of aligning the body, soul, and spirit to be in alignment, not just for the new year, but for the whole year. So we want to begin to learn about it and then cultivate some spiritual practices that help us to improve our well-being overall, and specifically for managing and overcoming stress. So that may be an issue for you, or maybe it's for someone in your family that you know. Our body, soul, and spirit is so interconnected. It's such an important component of who we are as human and spiritual beings. And we often forget, especially in times of stress or chaos or disorder in our lives, we often forget the spiritual part of ourselves. So we want to bring that back into the conversation, but also from an integrated and holistic perspective that incorporates the physiology and the medical and the science around it, which many of you know Reverend Dr. John Graham, and I want to just introduce him. He is very, very knowledgeable about this subject, and I'm so honored to be working with you, John, in this. I'm delighted to be collaborating with John. Reverend Dr. John Graham is a medical doctor who also has a PhD in mind body medicine. John is a physician, an Episcopal priest, and he served for 12 years as president and CEO of the Institute for Spirituality and Health at the Texas Medical Center in Houston. And he recently completed his new PhD in mind body medicine with a specialization in psychophysiology. John has made many presentations, over 70 presentations at national conferences here in the US, and multiple articles published in the medical literature. And so his training uniquely prepares him to talk about what we're going to be describing tonight, be learning about tonight and experiencing. And that's the 5 organ systems in the body that the spiritual practices can bring into balance and alignment for our health and well-being. These are so important to understand about our own way that we were created, and also then to have these spiritual practices that help us go deeper into that balance. So John is going to be teaching us tonight. What a blessing, what an honor to be here. And then following John's presentation, I'm going to lead us in some prayer and guided meditation with the Alchemy Crystal Singing Bowls as just part of the experience for tonight, to be a sacred experience for all of us here in the Yoga Mass community and the health and wellness community. So with that, I would like to introduce my dear, dear friend, John Graham.
Thank you very much, Jenna. And it's a delight to be here and to be a part of us being a team together in this presentation. I'm going to open my screen. What we're going to do today is look really at a holistic approach, mind, body, and spirit. That's all of us, all that we are made of, and how to bring that in alignment throughout the year, and particularly as we begin a new year. I want to first of all say my interest in this came about because I was, first of all, as you heard, a physician and Episcopal priest, and then I received my PhD in mind body medicine with specialization in psychophysiology. It's really all about how this works. How does spirituality have any impact on our life? So we're going to learn that, and we're going to get an overview in this course today. And then if you wish to take the 5-part sessions that come up, we will be discussing all of it in great detail. I have tried all my life to engage in lifestyle changes, and they last me for about 2 months at best. I'm talking about lifting weights. I'm talking about, anything I want to do. I'm talking about walking, really jogging when I was younger. Uh, I did all kinds of yoga practices, all kinds of things, and I would drop out of them shortly. But recently, a few years ago, I developed type 2 diabetes. At least they diagnosed it was as pre-diabetic. And it was because my father has diabetes and I had it and I inherited it. So I began to be awakened. I've got to do something on a long term basis. And I've used a lot of the skills I learned in mind body medicine. It worked for me. I've lost weight and all kinds of things. And I want to share that. And that's what we're going to do in this course. Um, Many believe that our body is just a shell. I've heard that many times from religious people, and that it's unimportant spiritually. Yet in Genesis, we read that God formed us out of the dust of the earth and then breathed breath of life into us. And God said that everything He made was good or very good, as our body is. So if we care for our body, it could be seen as an act of faith, an active response to the fact that God has already created our bodies, and it would be wise for us to care for our bodies. And so we can do that in a lot of different ways. And these are some of the ones I did for about 2 months. I exercised 5 days a week for 2 months. I did all kinds of healthy nutrition. I avoided all kinds of things like sugar and salt. Uh, I tried to get a healthy weight, but I remained up around 190 pounds until recently. I was getting sporadic sleep at night, and I tried to limit my alcohol. But if you get depressed or pressured and anxious about anything in life, you wind up drinking more. Fortunately, all of my entire life, I've never taken tobacco in my body. I took one puff and began to cough when I was a teenager, and that was the end of it. I didn't want any part of it. I have engaged in spiritual practices all of my life, but really particularly in the really as being an Episcopal priest. So you know that. Uh, we're going to talk about how what I've just told you, how does it work? And if you know how it works and what parts of our body are being activated by these practices, these lifestyle changing things, you will be more motivated to do them. But I'm talking about our heart. I'm talking about respiration, our breathing. I'm talking about our autonomic nervous system, which you know is sympathetic and parasympathetic. I'm talking about your blood pressure and the anterior frontal lobe of your brain. We're going to look at each one of these in great detail. I can give you an overview today and tonight, and I will do that. But I want you to realize we need all 5 of them to be in alignment and to be integrated together. And when they're together and aligned and coherent, there's health and well-being that we have. Conversely, if we exist with a lot of stress and anxiety and don't know how to manage it, these 5 systems are not coherent. In fact, they are incoherent. And the result is adverse effects upon our heart and really our health in general, and sense of well-being. So let's begin with the 5 by letting me look at this. I'm going to try to, I've got to get rid of this screen up here. Well, I was trying to get rid of the row of them. I don't seem to be able to do that right now. I'm sorry. Let me say this. The heart is absolutely amazing. Without any effort on your part, it's been beating 70 to 80 times a minute ever since you were born, and while you were, in fact, even before you were born, while you were in your mother's womb. And it is, wow, I hit the wrong button. It is the most vital and most complicated organ in our body. Consists of 4 chambers, 4 valves that happen to work consistently together and to regulate the filling and the pumping actions of our heart. And that will happen in your lifetime about 3 billion times. I read this and I doubted it, so I did the math myself. And I promise you, if you do the math, if you have a heartbeat of 70 times a minute, which is the average, 72 times a minute, and you multiply it out by the days and months and years of your life, it will be about 3 billion, right at 3 billion times. Amazingly. And we're going to look at what that means. And when we look at the heart in great detail, we're going to find out that there may be ways for us to increase the pumping action for a longer period of time of our heart. Our heart contractions are controlled by all kind of an intricate system of electrical and mechanical fields that we're going to be looking at in this study, because it is from all of the five systems interact with each other. And I'm going to show you a picture later as to how that happens. But you can see on this picture of the heart, by the way, I was tempted to get a pumping heart. I was afraid it might knock some of you out. It's pumping, I wanted to do that. But even better, this little picture shows the valves. You have two that are between the big chambers of the four chambers of your heart, and then you have two at the orifices, the openings to the pulmonary artery and the big aorta. 20% of the blood that comes out of your heart goes to your brain. That's going to be significant, and we're going to look at that and why it's so significant as we continue this study together. The respiratory system is the second one. And we don't often think about it, but it begins at our nose, goes down and includes our mouth, includes the larynx, that is where your voice box is, your windpipe, and then the trachea all the way down into your lungs. And you have, of course, two of them, most of us do. In blood that passes through the lungs, all kinds of arteries and capillaries are in here. That's where the carbon dioxide is exchanged in the alveoli, which we'll look at when we study the lungs. And it takes up oxygen, as you know, with the breath that we take in. We're going to look at why that's important, what breath you take in when we get to the lungs. One more thing I want you to see is this muscular diaphragm at the bottom of beneath your lungs. We're going to study about why it is important, and it's a very special thing to help our breathing, because we can breathe. We breathe all the times involuntarily. It just naturally happens. It's innate to our lungs and to our diaphragm to breathe. But we can do it volitionally. We can decide to breathe, and we do that principally with our diaphragm. And we're going to learn all about that because that's important in the process. And when we engage in breathing exercises that are a part of almost all of the spiritual practices that we teach, they help us to bring alignment. They're very important to alignment, including, believe it or not, even the electrical activity in your brain is affected by when you breathe. And I know you didn't know that, but it was. In fact, there's a rhythm to the electrical activity in your brain, at least 3 or 4 parts, the major parts of your brain. There's an electrical activity that becomes rhythmic and in sync with your breathing. And I know you didn't know that because you have to do a lot of study to learn about that. But it's important. Also, the autonomic nervous system, number 3, is very important. It regulates most automatically without you thinking about it, regulates your heart rate. Well, it has an impact on your heart rate and all the physiological processes you see out here, including digestion, the heart rate, the lungs, even the pupils of your eye. And you have 2 systems, as you know, the sympathetic and the parasympathetic, and they work silently all the time. And you don't think much about it, but I'm going to show you how you can do something about it when we get to this part of our study, the autonomic nervous system. It has, of course, the sympathetic nervous system, what we all know as fight or flight, in response to the stressful survival situations of our life. When danger is there, we either run the other way or we stand up and fight. But the sympathetic nervous system works all the time. It is in balance with the parasympathetic. And so it controls something to do with the pupils of your eye. And then the parasympathetic is what we call rest and digest. And it has to do a lot with calming everything down that the sympathetic nervous system wants to activate. In other words, the sympathetic is trying to get us ready for fight or flight in dangerous situations. Parasympathetic is calming us down. So we need to learn about both of them, but particularly we need to learn how to control the parasympathetic nervous system and have it responsive to us. The fourth area that is important is blood pressure. Some of you perhaps even have high blood pressure, but the control of blood pressure and blood flow throughout the body is vitally important for maintaining homeostasis, the God-given state that we should have. Blood pressure plays an important role, particularly in the cardiovascular system, and has tremendous implications that I'm going to mention in just a second. The blood pressure is adjusted by a very intricate and intrinsic neural and also mechanical effects that go on in the carotid artery and other arteries throughout the body, as well as other areas, including even the kidneys. There are hormones that the kidneys release that have an effect on your blood pressure. All kinds of drugs are designed to use some of these facts to manage high blood pressure. But you can also manage it. You can help manage it yourself by things we're going to teach in this course. There is a reflex called the barrel reflex, and that's shown here by these nerves going back and forth. That is one of the most helpful and potent regulations for the blood pressure. It buffers the blood pressure fluctuations, and it's very significant for maintaining adequate perfusion of your brain. The blood pressure is really important. It needs to be at a certain pressure level. If it gets below 60, you will almost always pass out and damage will occur to your brain. So you need it at the right level. You have to know, I think it's helpful to know how to manage your blood pressure. And the fifth area is the prefrontal lobe, right in the front of your brain. As depicted in this picture on the left, I'm showing you that's the front part of the brain. And you'll notice the thalamus, you'll notice there are projections coming from the amygdala and other areas of the midbrain that reflect up in. And also, if you'll notice, there are arrows showing fibers come back and go the other direction. So that it's integrated. There's an interconnected, the frontal lobe is interconnected with the amygdala, the thalamus, hippocampus, and the hypothalamus as well. And it's very important that we understand that the executive functions that are present up here are in our control. They allowed us to sustain attention. They allow us to be aware, planned, have control of our emotional and behaviors, the regulation of them, make decisions that are vitally important, including the decision to do some spiritual practices that we will be talking about throughout this course. And also, it's important to inhibit emotions that our amygdala of our brain will want us to react to dramatically. We can calm those down because we can know that that's not important. We don't have to worry about it. But we can do this if we know how to do it. We can also use that portion of the brain, the frontal part, to voluntarily engage in spiritual practices, but also those lifestyle practices that I mentioned at the beginning that can bring about health and well-being. I'm going to talk, when I talk about the brain, about the three brains that are at work in all of us all the time. I think you may know about them. This is called the reptilian brain, the lower part of the brain. This in yellow is talking about the mammalian brain that includes a lot that has to do with emotions. You know that because your dogs and your cats have emotions. You can touch them and you see their reactions. But the human has, of course, a different brain, has a yet more brain it brings with the cortex. And we're going to study those in great detail when we get to the brain in the fifth part of our study that's coming up. Here's a graphic picture of what I've been talking about. I think it puts it all together. And right in the center of all of this is the heart. I should have put that pumping heart there. You would have loved it. Okay, the pumping heart is affected by the autonomic nervous system, both sympathetic and parasympathetic nerve fibers. It is affected by the baroreceptors, which have to do with the blood pressure. It's affected by your lungs. It's called here respiratory arrhythmia. That's simply that it changes all the time depending on need. And there is a natural rhythm that's at work from the respiratory, from your breathing. And then finally, what we looked at before, the prefrontal lobe of the brain. And that is important because it can have an impact. I'm trying to show that with the red line pointing down. It has an impact on all of this. And all of this that I've just shown you, I could draw an arrow from the lungs, from the heart. I could draw an arrow from all of these to the frontal lobe, this autonomic nervous system. It could be, they're all interactive and they need to be coherent. They need to be together, moving and beating, and lungs and heart and the brain, all of it together. Very important. And we can measure this. I'm not going to have you measure it particularly, but if you look at this particular drawing, let me go back. Frustration. See how chaotic that tracing is? But if you do get incoherence, you have a sine wave. Everything is coherent in this case. And I promise you, can happen to you, it can happen to me because this tracing is me. I am doing the practice that is important that we teach, and I am in coherence here. I promise you I wasn't before I did it, but this is possible. And the more we practice the practices that we can do, we develop a coherence that is very healthy. This is another picture that you're going to see 3 or 4 times in the next 5 because it's looking at respiration, which is the second talk in our series. It's looking at the heart, which is the first part of our series of 5. And it's looking at the blood pressure, which is the 4th one. And notice how chaotic they are until they become coherent. And we want to know how to quickly achieve coherence. And you get better at it as you're taught, but that's where we're going to go. So the alignment of these 5 systems is important, but our life is filled with stress, loss, grief, leading to disequilibrium within our body and imbalance. You have probably had at least half of the things listed over here, right? You may be in some of them right now. I recently retired from the Institute for Spirituality and Health. They made me president emeritus, and I'm proud of that. But, I had to go through a transition time. And I used a lot of the skills that we're going to talk about to manage if you will, the stress of not having a job that I would go to. But I also lead a bereavement group. There are people with grief that experience this in great. People that have lost a job, lost employment, and just everyday stress is upon us. So we need a measure, and the whole study that we're going to do in 5 parts, the goal of it is to restore what I consider the God-given um, alignment that our body should have that will bring health and wholeness, body, mind, and spirit. And spiritual practices can do that. We're going to look at exactly scientific studies showing meditation, contemplation, how not all prayer, by the way, some prayer can actually make you more anxious. We're going to look at the best kind of prayer. We're also going to look at yoga and Tai Chi and contemplative studies and all kinds of things that have shown scientifically the benefit and how they bring into alignment and coherence these five systems in our body so that we can have homeostasis. And the result is we're centered and we're in balance, and that it leads to a sense of well-being in us. So why would we need a 5-week course? First of all, just awareness. You're now aware that there's a 5 system that needs alignment. And that's important, but it's not enough. It requires really an experience with specific practices that can affect and align the mind, body, and spirit adequately. And we can learn to do that. All of us can. Awareness is enough. You need solid knowledge. Now, over here on the left, there are stones 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And there's a second one, a sixth one. And I'm going to tell you that if you don't get these 5 in alignment, they activate a response in your brain that leads to the adrenal gland pouring out more of the epinephrine and other hormones from your adrenal gland that are harmful to your body. So we need to get these in alignment for that to get in alignment as well. The 5-week course is going to be, we've decided it would be Tuesday evenings at 6 o'clock instead of Thursday that you met today. I hope that's all right. We're going to record them January the 9th through February the 6th, every Tuesday. And I believe you'll truly come to a deeper understanding of these 5 systems in your body that are so important. I believe in fact, you could teach them to other people because you're going to have these slides if you want them. They're going to be recorded, and the slides that I've put together are really profound. I want to tell you, they are sort of a concise look at the 4 years of training I had in mind-body medicine, and particularly in specialization of psychophysiology, the physiology of how it all works. And I believe at the end of the course, you'll know how to bring those systems into alignment. You can do it yourself. You can create homeostasis and promote health and a sense of well-being that we all need. At the beginning, I began by saying our physical body is a gift from God that God says is very good. And understanding our 5 systems and using spiritual practices will bring them into alignment is one way that we care for our bodies as an act of faith. I believe that's important. At this time, I've finished my introduction to the course, and Gena Davis, the Reverend Gena Davis, will lead us in some spiritual practices that could be, for many of us, the first step in this process of bringing our 5 systems, the body, in alignment for this new year that we are now in. So I'm going to stop my sharing screen and I give you back to Gena Davis.
Incredible. That was so much information in just such a short period of time. I have so many questions and can't wait to go deeper. Oh my gosh, it's beautiful. Thank you for sharing your vast knowledge with us. And I think it's going to be a really fun journey. So, as John was talking about this 5-week course that we've put together, we introduced the 5 systems that John just told you about. We're going to go deeper in each one. And what we wanted to do today was tonight also was just to begin to have some experience with some spiritual practices. And so I wanted just to kind of run through some of those that can be really valuable. And in the faith community, we all begin with prayer. So we know that prayer is a huge spiritual practice that affects us. It affects our soul. It affects our heart. It brings us into right relationship with God. And when we forget to pray, we can kind of feel like we've lost our way. So prayer is a way to bring us back into alignment with God. And when we begin to experience that alignment, we begin to experience alignment within as well. So that's a hugely important one. And I'm just going to give you a couple of ideas on some of these spiritual practices that we'll be exploring during the 5 weeks. Another is mantra meditation. There are a lot of different ways to meditate. There is secular meditation, transcendental meditation, mindfulness meditation. In the faith tradition, there is a mantra meditation, and so we're going to practice a very short mantra meditation tonight. And from the Christian perspective, that comes to us from the Desert Fathers and Mothers from early Christianity, the second and third centuries. Also, at John, as you mentioned, breath work is so important for the respiratory system and really connecting all the systems in the body. So we are going to learn about breath work, and that is a very important spiritual practice. It's one that we can do every morning when we wake up. We can start with our spiritual practice of actually doing breath work that comes from the yogic tradition, some of the Eastern traditions, ways to begin to infuse our body with life force. So that's a very important one. Another one is the heart sacral connection. And we begin to understand how important that is when we practice energy practices, the heart and the sacral connection in our womb or Dantian space and the heart space. When those are connected in alignment, we are feeling a sense of balance and homeostasis. Also, another one that is so important is just balancing the energy centers in the body, which we call chakras, the main chakras. Just balancing those will help feed the various organ systems that John is going to be teaching us about. And thank you for that amazing explanation. Another practice is to actually engage in sound healing as part of moving us into that balance, or as John used the term, coherence. So there is a lot about that. I want to teach more about that for you to have that experience. But for tonight, for this time, let's take a moment to experience prayer and a short meditation with sound. So just to have a moment of moving into alignment with God, with the divine, and then moving into that state of relaxation. So you can stay right where you are in a seated position. And we'll just begin by closing our eyes and going inward. If that feels right for you now, you can keep the eyes open, but I'd like to invite us to move into a prayer. So let us pray. O God, source of all light and love and life, we reach out to you with hopeful hearts as we embrace the knowledge of the intricate mystery and miracle of who we are in our bodies, in our minds, our souls, and our spirits, as we embrace the interconnectedness of it all, of not leaving the body behind or the spirit behind, but incorporating all of who we are into the whole. And we ask you to help us to feel your presence, the presence of spirit, as intimate as breath, a reminder that none of us walks alone, that within us we are connected and among us we are connected. And let us remember the light that we carry within, the eternal spark of your divine love within us. And in the Christ light we pray. Amen. So what I'd like to introduce now is a spiritual practice that we call mantra meditation. And it can be used across all spiritual and religious traditions. So, from whatever place you come from, this applies to you. If you wish to use a term out of the Holy Scripture, that's fine. I'm going to teach you how to do that. So, the mantra meditation uses a mantra or a sacred word in repetition, in silent repetition while we go into the silence. So we move into a silent prayer state, and the mind begins to repeat the mantra or the sacred word. And why that is so powerful is that as we are repeating the sacred word, the mind begins to become quiet. The thoughts, the distractions of the mind that are so natural for the human, they begin to get quiet. The mind actually can eliminate and reduce all of those distractions, all of those thoughts, those thought patterns, by simply returning to the sacred word. So it's natural for the mind to want to start thinking about something. Just return to the sacred word. Go back to the mantra. And so many people like to actually connect with their breath as part of that mantra, just breathing, the sound of the breath. But some people like to use a sacred word like peace or love or joy, something that we really want, that we want to cultivate. One word that I love to teach is a word that was given to me from the very early Desert Fathers, that is taught by the World Community for Christian Meditation, which I'm a member of. I'm an oblate with them, and this word is Maranatha. And Maranatha is an Aramaic word, which is the word, the language that Jesus spoke, Aramaic, back in the day that he was walking on the earth in his body. Maranatha means come, Lord. Maranatha. It's very powerful because this Aramaic word is not a language that we speak. So we don't have images or thoughts or memories attached to that word. It is a word that doesn't mean much to us. But in sacred scripture, it's at the very end of the book of Revelation. Maranatha, come, Lord. It's a beautiful prayer. And so when we go into silent prayer, we can use the mantra Maranatha if we want, or we can use peace or love, whatever word comes to you that feels right for you. We can also sync the sacred word with our breath. So I'll show you how we do that. We can inhale. We're going to use the belly to breathe. We're going to inhale Mara, exhale Natha. Mara, Natha. So we begin to synchronize it with our breath. Another way we can do it is Mar, Ra, Na, Tha. So if you want to slow it down, Mara, Na, Tha. So that would be 2 complete breaths. So what I'd like to do is just invite us to move into the mantra meditation for a brief couple of minutes to have that experience. And then I will begin to play the alchemy crystal bowls for a few minutes so you can experience the sound waves as they begin to invite your body and the organ systems in your body and the various biological and spiritual systems that John was describing, the energy systems. They will begin to move into coherence with the bowls if we can relax into receiving the sounds. So if that feels right to you, we're just going to spend a few minutes doing this, maybe, about 7, 8 minutes. And then I will gently bring us out, and then we'll have about 10 minutes or so to share. Okay. So if it's good for you where you are, you may stay right where you are. And I just invite you in the mantra meditation, you want to sit tall with a straight spine, if that's possible for you. And you can place the hands on the thighs, palms up or palms down. Either way is good for you. Whatever works for you. Okay? And so what I'd like you to do is just gently close the eyes, very gently. Relax the shoulders, relax the tongue and the mouth, and just begin the soft belly breathing, relaxing into the space where you are, allowing the breath to fill the belly. And as we exhale out, we begin the mantra meditation with a prayer. Holy Spirit, come that we may feel your presence within us and around us, that we may be aware that your presence is everywhere, and we can feel you if we simply become quiet and still. Come, come, Lord, come. Maranatha, Maranatha, peace, love, Maranatha. Maranatha. Gently begin to become aware of your breath. And become aware of the body. Notice the gentleness of the heartbeat, the softness of the breath, and the calmness of the mind. And slowly begin to make gentle movements with the fingers and the toes. Just bringing gentle movements back into the body. Take your time. And when you're ready, you can gently begin to open the eyes and come back into the group. I hope that experience was a good experience. While John was giving his presentation, I included the registration link for the 5-week course. We're going to be going deeper into each of the 5 systems that John taught us about. And then we will have spiritual practices to settle those into us, to sink them in so that we can begin to cultivate maybe ways you already know with a deeper understanding, and maybe new ways that you haven't tried before, just to deepen the spiritual life and improve the well-being of all of us. We all need it, because life always presents challenges. And as John and I were talking, like, this is going to be a hard year probably, with respect to what's going on in the country, right? But what we want to do, as John said, is get to that place where we are so centered and aligned within our own body and with God, that all those things that happen around us don't affect us on that deeper level. They may happen and we may have to react, but we don't really have to react. We can pull back from that and go back to our grounded and centered state. And John's going to be teaching us how that movement of that spiritual practice and the awareness of going back into alignment can move us into a greater state of healing and wholeness and wellness within this God-given gift, this body that we have. We would like to just open it up for comments, questions, sharing experiences. John and I are both here to answer your questions. And then if you just want to share, if you have an experience to share, let's just try to limit it to 1 or 2 minutes so that those who want to share will have a chance. We've got 5-10 minutes left. Does that sound good? So feel free to unmute yourself and ask and share. We'd love to hear from you. Love to hear your thoughts.
I have a question.
Yes. Hi, Mary.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Hi, Marilyn.
Okay. Gina, you were talking about, I guess it's Jenna, not Gina. I'm
Jenna. Yes,
sorry.
Jenna. Thank you.
You were talking about the mantra meditation. I do transcendental meditation, and would it be wise to use the same mantra that I use for that, or is it supposed to be different?
No, it does not have to be different. I'm going to say to you, you use the mantra that feels right for you. And if you have practiced with a mantra over the years or even recently, but through your life, by all means, if that's your sacred word, then you want to use that. The idea is that you are moving into alignment with your sacred word. As you repeat that word silently, you're moving into your alignment, and it's for you. It's something we do personally so that we can then have that ripple effect of wellness and peace to all the people around us. So it starts here.
Jenna,
It's a
I'd
great
like
question.
to make a comment. The practice that Jenna led us in was, 5 minutes. I want you to know you need to do it about 20 minutes at minimum. And it is something that you acquire over time also. As you continue to use your sacred word, the impact will grow. And it doesn't matter what religion or particularly you are. It's beautiful to me to be able to do it for a period of time of 20 minutes would be good. I want you also to know there are scientific studies I'll be mentioning. The sacred word really has power and has an effect. And all of these practices that Jenna will be sharing with you, including the sacred music, the sacred bowl that she was making a sound with. Now, you also would want it to be for 20 minutes, and she has on her website opportunities for you to spend time with the sacred bowl if that's something that works well for you.
Thank you, John. Any other thoughts or questions or reflections? We'd love to hear from you. So I will respond. I want to say something, John, about that 20 minutes as well. It's so beautiful that you brought that up. So I'm introducing this idea of the mantra meditation. The John knows the science behind it. I learned as a spiritual practice through the World Community for Meditation that 20 minutes is really the minimum time for you to deeply move in to that very, very deep and quiet space where we experience oneness with God. And it typically, as you practice it, you can cultivate a sense that you are moving into that state in a much faster way. But typically, it takes about 10 to 15 or so minutes just for the mind to get quiet. And then all of a sudden, the mind gets quiet. All of a sudden, there's this experience of just dropping into this incredible, vast love and just being in this vastness. And then, as when we experience it, we may, the mind goes, oh, I just had that experience. And then, boom, we're out. Right. So it's really, that's why we call it a spiritual practice, because the mind wants to come back in always and control it, observe it, see it, view it, So the 20 minutes is scientifically and spiritually the amount of time that we would want to spend, and ideally even more than that. If you have 30 minutes, sometimes people will go on silent retreat to have those experiences for hours and days. Yeah. So, okay. Well, I'm going to open it up. If anybody else has a question, we'd love to hear from you. Would anyone like to share?
Jenna, I was kind of going along with Marilyn's statement. Many years ago, I did transcendental meditation, and it was a 20-minute practice.
Mm-hmm.
And I do remember my mantra, but it has almost the same cadence as Maranatha,
Mm,
which I found quite interesting because I really am, I've done retreats and
mm,
I feel like Dr. John on spiritual as well as physical. They
yeah.
just are all over the place. And I do need to learn to quiet my mind again and certainly need to get my health back in order. So I deeply appreciate his explanations and your, I've listened to you to through spiritual practice and I look forward to the course.
One, yeah.
Thank you, Lee.
I think many of us feel that way, Lynn, that this is something we need to get back to and to get recentered in with our spiritual practices. And with John's incredible knowledge of how those practices affect the body and the interrelated systems within us is such a powerful combination. We felt like this was just something that is so needed right now.
Jenna, I'd like to tell everybody, the first time you do it, even for 20 minutes, doesn't mean you're going to immediately have that oneness experience. So be persistent and know that you're not abnormal. There's nothing wrong with you. This is a innate human ability. We can all do it. It may take time to quieten the mind. I'm talking about, say, even weeks, but just persevere with it, and it will become a treasure gift to you that you will always have and be able to use. And it'll be one of the things. We're going to have a lot of tools that we're going to be sharing in depth, and we have time to, do it and share it with you in depth. But more importantly, you're going to have a scientific foundation that what you're doing is right, is appropriate, it's been proven to work, and you know, I don't know of anything better than having that kind of knowledge when you enter these practices. Otherwise, you just, if like I was before, 2 months, and then you drop it and move away from it. That's but when you know for sure that this is of value, then you stick with it, and then it becomes really a special thing, special treasure.
Thank you, John. I would like to answer Janelle's question about, is there a better time of the day to do a mantra meditation, to be in silence? So the teachers teach us that we can have the practice in the morning, like when we would have our quiet prayer time. If you have that time set up already, or if you'd like to add it, even better if the sun hasn't come up yet. Some people like to have it not after lunch or not after breakfast. So you don't want to do it when the body is digesting food. You want to do it before digestion. So you could have it late afternoon, or some people like to do it, 8 or 9 o'clock at night before bedtime, several hours after your evening meal. So one of the things I'll be sharing is about these practices, about the mantra meditation, how to go deeper in this practice. I'll be sharing that during the course. But ideally, what you want to do is pick a time that works for you, that you can continue on that daily basis. So the body and the mind and the spirit love that rhythm. We want to move into rhythm. So if you pick the morning, early morning, that's when you want to try to do it and keep that as a practice at the same time, or evening or afternoon, whenever you do it. Just you want to try to keep that as a practice that you can maintain each day at that time. So I hope that helps. Yes, and John says Mara Natha. The other way is Mara Natha. So that's great. Thank you. Yeah. So pick what works for you. And I think to John's point, like we can always try to do things that are good for us, and then 2 months later we don't stick with it. But the key here is to find that rhythm, that time that you're always going to be practicing the prayer. And if you build it in, some people, this is how most people start, 5 minutes. If you've never sat in silence, 5 minutes, then build it to 10, build it to 15, build it to 20, and then you're there. Take the time you need to get there. And there's no rush. We have all the time. This is just, it's all sacred time. Great questions. Yes, thank you. Okay. Well, let's take one more question, and then our time is about up. Would anyone like to, it doesn't have to be a question, just a sharing, if you'd like to share. Well,
Let
John,
me say one thing.
okay.
It may be important for you to have a group like this to support you in these practices. And that's why doing the 5 weeks, and we will probably continue it after that in a different way. But what will happen is we will get familiar with each other. I hope this group will return, And for 5 weeks, we will know each other, but we'll know our practices, and there won't be a lot of, you'll be sharing all kinds of things because you feel comfortable with each other. And some of you already do feel that comfort level, but you will feel it even more as we go along. And we need support group for this as well as everything else in life.
Mhm. Thank you, John.
Okay.
We appreciate you so much. Thank you for sharing your evening with us. Thank you so much. Bye-bye,
Bye
Liz.
bye.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.